Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee, and I'm just about to admit meteorologist Joe Rayo. He is jumping in here now, and welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe weather show. And Mr. Rayo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, very good. So, another first. The National Hurricane Center has used the word ginormous on
Mm.
their advisory. I have never seen them use the word ginormous, but indeed,
And it is a
hurricane.
word.
It
It is a word.
is.
I always
Um,
thought it was just like a play on words, but I looked it up, and it actually has like a British origin, I
uh,
think, from what I saw. But you're absolutely right. They refer to Teddy as ginormous Teddy.
yeah, I was. I didn't get a chance to read the advisory up until about 10 minutes ago. I just went, "Whoa, that's a new one for them." But uh, even before I read the advisory and looking at it on the satellite perspective, Joe, it's huge. The
Yes,
circulation goes out 1,000 miles. The wind radius is about 500 miles across in terms of the gales. This is a very, very large storm, no doubt, and the satellite signature is is very impressive.
tropical storm force winds extending out as far west as Cape Cod and Nantucket Island. Also, cloudiness. The back edge of the clouds, the expanding cloud shield, it seemed to me, at least looking at on the satellite, Joe, seemed to make it as far east as the Twin Forks today on Long Island.
Actually, a little bit further west than that because I went fishing this afternoon down in Mastic Beach, which is on the well, if you go a little bit further to south where Smith Point is, it's just to the east of Fire Island, and I could see the cirrus, the back. It was like a ruler. It was clear, looking west, and then an absolute ruler where the back edge of the clouds were. And I'm bringing up a couple of different satellite perspectives here. This is the view of Canada, mostly Canada, actually all of Canada and most of the United States. But you look at that circulation. The high clouds go all the way up into northern Labrador, for God's sake. It's really impressive.
Yes, take a look at that. That is a classic textbook hurricane, and I don't blame the. I don't know who the forecaster was who used the term ginormous, but that is a ginormous storm right there. And yeah, the last time I saw something on the technical analysis that made me feel the way I did when I saw ginormous today was, and I only mentioned this a few days ago, back in 2002 when they were talking about how long Hurricane Kyle was, and somebody led off the statement with "staying alive, staying alive."
Right.
Every once in a while, you'll get a forecaster over at the Hurricane Center with a bit of a sense of humor, and that certainly was the story today.
Well, yeah, and that's not a bad thing. It gives you a sense of relief when you're working with these things on a day-to-day basis. It almost becomes personal. You know these storms like you would another person.
Yeah.
In the meantime, with that circulation so large, you see how it's impacting. There's a weather system that's moving across south central Canada over Hudson Bay, and you see how the circulation of Teddy is so dominant that those clouds are actually getting deflected northward, well north of the storm, and they stay a separate entity as they head out south of Greenland and across the Atlantic. Just really, this is just a very impressive signature. Also, just want to point out that we do have a bit of a powerhouse weather front coming into the Pacific Northwest that's going to bring some well deserved and much needed heavy rain for Washington and Oregon, and maybe even into northwestern California, but it probably won't get much further south than that. But it does bring at least some wildfire relief there. And you can only see the very top of the clouds from Tropical Storm Beta, which is now a depression, which is actually the Hurricane Center just wrote their last advisory on that. And we're going to take a look at what's going on down in Texas. But let's go front and center with uh, Teddy. it's getting to Joe. It's starting to look like it's making that transition over into an extratropical storm, and we kind of get wrapped up in all the technicals. At the end of the day, it's really about the weather that occurs, and the transition really doesn't make that much of a difference in terms of what the actual weather outcome is going to be. That's the only important thing, and it's a very important one, by the way, is the fact that it still has a core, and you can see it there on the infrared satellite. But gradually, as we go through the night, that core is going to weaken, and it's going to look a little bit more like a non-tropical storm. But it's not going to change in terms of the rain that's going to fall or the winds that are going to be produced.
You're absolutely right. And it looks like, Joe, at the speed that it's moving, it probably is going to be making landfall somewhere along the southern and eastern coastline of Nova Scotia. I'd say around 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. And it brings with it a rather significant storm surge, I'm sure. I saw one of the reports say that 90 miles from the center of this storm, there were wave heights that were measured at 43 feet
That's
high.
that's insane. I mean, we were kidding around about we were talking yesterday about the European model showing 100-foot waves. Uh, that seemed a bit much, but for God's sake, 40 plus feet. Whoa, that's a surfer's lover. That's what a surfer loves.
I'm sure, though, that if you were a surfer, I'm not sure if you really would want to hang 10 on a 43-foot wave, but that's how the story is going with Teddy. And yeah, up and down most of the Atlantic seaboard, all kinds of advisories for rough surf and heavy undertow and swells and all sorts of stuff. So if you're a beachcomber and you want to go to Jones Beach tomorrow, for example, just be careful. I'm sure the red flags are flying. I'm not even sure whether or not they would allow anybody to go into the water with these kind of conditions.
Yeah,
But
I kind of doubt it. I didn't go down to the actual ocean where I was. I was on the bay side, and the waters in the bay were actually quite high. I was a little surprised at how high the water was. I wasn't even. I think it was just coming into the peak of high tide. And the water levels, again, with the northwest wind, kept it from getting too out of hand, and there was no tidal flooding on the bayside that I saw. But there were, the waves were crashing along the Long Island South Shore today, and there was some coastal flooding earlier today with some of the high tides, and also on the North Shore of Long Island as well. And rough surf running up and down the eastern seaboard, and that's going to continue until this gets out of the way. I've got some current conditions here. Now, the radar on this graphic from the U.S. Weather Service cuts off, so we don't see some of the rains. There are patches of rain that are falling across Nova Scotia at the moment. And we do have some gusty winds. Yarmouth right now is gusting to 40. They're 50 degrees with a 29 north wind to 29, gusting to 40, reporting light rain. Uh, Baccaro Point, which is on the southwest corner there, on the ocean side, is 27, no direction given, 27 gusting to 40. Further up the coast, we'll go to Western Head, Nova Scotia, which is north at 15, gusting to 26. So they're not really doing very much there. Lunenburg at 7 o'clock is north northwest at 15, gusting to 25. And then we'll jump over to Halifax. Halifax right now is 52, temperature dew point north northeast at 20, gusting to 30, with some light rain. Bevan Island or Bevan Island, which one is it? Do you know? Is it Bevan?
I'm not sure.
All right,
I'm
well
not
we'll say Bevan.
sure.
Bevan Island is east northeast at 43, gusting to 53, and further east at Hart Island Meteorological Aeronautical Presentation System. That's what it goes by. It's 28 from the east northeast, gusting to 37, and I only have two buoys, one way out at 42.2 and 62. This is buoy 44137. their wind is south at 42, gusting to 54. So the center of this is to the west of that particular buoy. And I'm just trying. Wave height measured there, Joe, 36.4 feet every 14 seconds.
Wow.
And
Wow.
another buoy that's well to the north. Well, it's not a buoy. I'm sorry, Sable Island. Sable Island is east southeast at 30, gusting to 31. 24 gusting to 31. Some light rain there. I'm just glancing through the obs to see if there's any kind of remarks. But so far, the worst of it is still to the south. So we're waiting for this to weather conditions to continue to deteriorate overnight over Nova Scotia. And I'll just jump over. By the way, I have Sydney. In Sydney is 26. East at 26, gusting to 40, with heavy rain being reported there. And now I don't know if this is right. On a place called Grand Etang or Etang, they're reporting an east wind of 46, but they say they had a gust to 90. I don't know. That's a little bit, I'm going to put a question mark there. I don't. I don't. It could very well be. I don't know the topography. It's in that. It's on the north shore of Nova Scotia, on the northeast corner, and there's a body of water there. So I don't know if stuff gets funneled down and it goes crazy, which is always possible. And just a quick look at what's going on in Newfoundland right now. They're seeing gale force gusts along the south. The south part, southernmost Newfoundland at Port aux Basques, which is 33, gusting to 42. Burgeo. I apologize if I'm pronouncing these wrong. East at 26, gusting to 35, and St. Lawrence is 26 from the east, gusting to 34. So they've got a ways to go yet. The weather conditions are going to deteriorate, take a little longer to deteriorate over Newfoundland. And I'm thinking, Joe, that Newfoundland probably won't get it nearly as bad because it is going to start to weaken as it crosses the center's forecast, probably to come close. It's probably going to come close to Hart Island in eastern Nova Scotia.
Yes. And I'm just wondering whether or not any of our people on the chat board who are in the Maritimes.
Well, we have someone on the board tonight from Cape Breton.
And I'm just wondering, how they're faring and whether or not they're concerned about maybe losing power. But that's something that, here, whenever we have any kind of a major wind maker like this one, for example, we always are concerned. We always get the email from the power company saying, we know what's going on. We have people are getting ready for it, and we'll try to repair your lines as quickly as possible.
Right,
within
a month.
And I hope that somebody from New York State, because during one of the 4 Easters that we had a few years ago, the people who brought the power lines back, or put the power lines back up and got everything running again, were from Prince Edward Island, Canada. And now it looks like those folks are under the gun. And I'm hoping that we return the favor, and somebody from NYSEG, for example, or Con Edison is up there getting ready to help them if power needs to be restored.
Tropical storm warnings extend as far west as down East Maine, and we have you can see the wind. Correction. I stand corrected. That's the wind extent of gales into southeast Maine and just touching Cape Cod, by the way. I mean, you can see how big the wind field is.
Right.
The blue is where we have the tropical storm warnings, which don't extend it to southeast Maine. So I did down East Maine. So I did misspeak there. It's all of the entire west and south coast of Nova Scotia is under tropical storm warning, and from that in Newfoundland, from Basque to about St. Lawrence is where you see the tropical storm warnings that have been issued there. And of course, the reddish brownish area there where the X is on the Hurricane Center's map, that's where the hurricane force winds are. As of 5 p.m. on the advisory, 5 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, It is at 41.1, 64.2. If you're plotting top winds, it did get up to 105. It strengthened overnight and this morning. Um, Top winds, they're carrying 90 miles an hour, moving north at 16. So it looks like it might have slowed down just a little bit from what it was moving before. And I'm just trying to see if there's anything else we can glean from this map. Well, you can see it becomes post-tropical overnight and then weakens as it down to a post-tropical tropical storm, if that's what you call it, and tracking over western Newfoundland and then on its merry way as it gets absorbed by a system up in the North Atlantic. And here's the GFS latest run, brand new GFS run. Doesn't really change very much at this point, but there's your low center tomorrow morning. It's just offshore near Hart Island, moves over the easternmost part of Nova Scotia, and then kind of skims western Newfoundland during late Wednesday afternoon into early Thursday morning, and then on its way and done. So um, fingers crossed that everything goes according to plan. If the system starts to weaken a bit, that's going to be a very good thing.
It will be. It will be. But at the moment, well, everybody right now, at least here in the immediate tri-state New York area, not really all that concerned about much of anything. We had so much to deal with during this summer season. It's kind of strange, Joe, to kind of be sitting on the sidelines, so to speak, and see stuff happening down, well, in Nova Scotia, for example, and New Brunswick, and down in Houston. Our friend Addison Green is in Houston, and one of the top stories on the evening news tonight is how the rains from Beta have literally flooded out good large portions of Houston with lots and lots of rainfall. I'm wondering how, I don't even know if he's watching, but I wonder how Addison is dealing with all of that at this moment in time down there.
Well, I'm looking. I just pulled up the radar. The rains have been kind of blotchy with this. It hasn't been one huge. You get these sort of patches of heavy rains, these clusters of heavy downpours, and you can see on the radar where the circulation is now. It's well inland. You're still seeing that turning and the bands of showers coming in off the Gulf of Mexico and the heavier downpours. This is moving very, very slowly, so there's going to be more rainfall out of this. And we said from the onset that this was probably going to be more of a rain event than anything else. And that rain, by the way, Joe, is spread up into northwest Louisiana, northeast Texas. Almost the whole state of Arkansas is raining right now, and even getting some rain from this in northwest Tennessee and western Kentucky. And it's still also producing a little bit of rain in southeast Louisiana, all the way down near the coast. So there's a lot of rain. It's not continuous. It's not a solid coverage through the western and central Gulf states, but there's enough there. And yes, the flooding has been considerable.
Now, the question I have for you, Joe, is, and I was debating this for a while this afternoon, will any of that moisture, you think, make it as far north as our area by the end of the week?
I kind of thought it wouldn't. It should get shunted underneath us.
Yeah, that I think it'll stay just off to our south, but you kind of wonder whether or not in future runs that some of that moisture
Something
will.
tries to sneak up.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Otherwise, I think if we don't get it from that, we could stay dry here probably right on through late Sunday, and may not be until really Monday that we'll get wet.
yeah, and when we get to the GFS, you're going to see that the GFS has actually pulled the rain out for Monday. I don't know if that's real or not. As I said earlier, having gone out fishing today, I didn't spend a whole lot of time looking at the models. So I'm seeing things kind of on the fresh side this evening. I moved the radar up to New England because you can see that in down East Maine, you can see the back edge of that rain backing westward into Maine and out over into the coastal waters. And as far as what's up with respect to advisories, the coastal flood warnings that were coastal flood advisories that were up for parts of Long Island, those are done, but we still have the high surf. We still have small craft advisories for the coastal waters, gale warnings that are up for coastal waters off southeast New England. And you see where the tropical storm warnings are up for the coastal waters way out. and they don't come into Maine, but they are indicating, at least from the map, that they do have this sort of narrow area of potential flash flooding from some of the rain backing westward. And of course, we can't see the warnings that are up for Halifax. Don't show up. It cuts off at the Canadian border because that's Environment Canada's bailiwick. But we also have, by the way, in contrast to this, Joe, red flag warnings up for Massachusetts and Rhode Island because of how bone dry it is there.
Somebody just said on the chat board, did not get the name. Sorry about that, but they said that there was a red flag warning up for Ulster County.
It might have been Chuck Cardillo. It might have been Chuck because he mentioned that to me. He sent me a message a little while ago about that. Not seeing it on this map, but the digital forecast map from the Weather Service sometimes doesn't update immediately. It usually takes a couple of hours for it to settle in. But if I take a look, uh, they do have uh, they have a special weather statement that's written up for a bunch of upstate New York in up the Hudson Valley. Elevated fire risk. They didn't put up a red flag warning, but they did set out a statement saying about elevated fire risk for Otsego, Delaware, and Sullivan counties in central New York. And yeah, that was it. That was it from the special weather statement, at least that came out from Albany. But it looks like it's many more counties than that because I'm looking at this map. I'm looking from the Binghamton office, so that's their bailiwick. And in the New York office, we're seeing Joe, much of the middle and upper Hudson Valley, the Berkshires, all under either a red flag warning or an elevated fire risk indicated by a special weather statement. We've got no rain around here.
It is dry, no question about that. And as I said, if we don't get anything from the remnants of Sally, excuse me, the remnants of Beta, we have so many of these things to
I
call.
know.
If we don't get anything from Beta on Friday, we may very well stay dry here, maybe right on through the upcoming weekend.
Good. Yep. Some showers going on right now up and down the Rockies. Nothing exciting, but at least there's some shower activity. And as we said, there is some heavy rain headed for the Pacific Northwest. Right now, the radar's pretty quiet up there, just some scattered light showers coming in from off the Pacific. But once that frontal system that's out to the east sweeps inland, it is going to bring in some rain relief. And you can see from WPC's rainfall forecast over the next 7 days. We're actually going to get, if they're right, we should see, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a half in the Northeast down into the northern mid-Atlantic states, 2 to 3 inch rainfall amounts from Louisiana northeast across northern Alabama, northern Georgia, western South into North Carolina. And then, of course, in the Pacific Northwest, you're looking at uh, several to many inches of rain up in northwest Oregon and western Washington. And this is going to help some of the wildfires that are going on up there. But again, that rain does not extend down into California. So unfortunately, the pattern is changed a little bit, where you're getting these rains coming into the northwest, but not far enough south to bring some relief to California.
And I'm just looking here, again, a couple of people talking about the upcoming winter and talking about the starlings and the speckling on the starling. Now, I've never heard that before about the way the speckles on the starlings at this time of the year can somehow predict what the winter is going to be like. This is all new to me. It sounds a little birdy, but I and you know what? Since I moved up here to Putnam Valley, I don't see very many starlings. I mean, starlings were always quite prevalent where I used to live in Levittown in Long Island.
Oh, in the wintertime, they would hide behind the elevated signs on the Long Island Expressway to get out of the way of the wind.
Yeah,
You'd see them on the opposites. If there was a northwest wind and you were driving westbound, you would see them all lined up in front of the sign so that they wouldn't have to deal with the wind.
and
I've always thought the speckled the starlings that are speckled, because starlings tend to, they flock. They're not into they don't live individually. They gather in large flocks. That the speckled ones were the newly born that have reached that haven't quite reached full adulthood.
Well, it's I hope I'm pronouncing it Smata Mott on the chat board. And Smata says the starlings are heavily speckled compared to recent falls. The bills are dark. In the spring and summer, bills are yellow, and the plumage is black with no speckling with iridescence. So,
I
what is the
happen to think every year the starlings in the fall are speckled.
yeah? But what is yeah? Well, what the assumption here is that they're have more speckled now than they have been at this time in other falls, and I'm not sure what the illusion is
Well,
to that.
I've just eaten pasta for 2 out of the last 3 days, and I made tomato sauce, and studies show that uh, people who make pasta and tomatoes and sauce from scratch uh, tend to do that when approaching winters are going to be cold.
Oh,
Did you know that?
do you have any idea what it means when your wife makes out of the blue shrimp scampi?
Oh, you mean what the meteorological connection to that is? I have
Yeah.
no clue.
Oh, well, we had shrimp scampi tonight.
Well, very good.
And in
All
fact,
right.
she had me she put me to work tonight. She had me take the I call it plastic. Whatever it is on the shrimp, that you have to take off or
Yeah,
peel off
the shell,
the shell, whatever. So
the
that's what I did.
plastic. Yes, the
That's what I was doing
plastic.
this afternoon, the plastic shell.
Oh, God. All right, let's look at Beta, which is inland, and the circulation is still pretty evident on the satellite loop, but it is, it's inland, and it's all about rain, and we'll probably be able to see this intact circulation, but there's no wind with it. It really is just all about the rain, and all the cloud cover is moving through into Alabama and Georgia, which is where most of that rain is going to be headed. And there's the forecast track from the Hurricane Center. They actually take the remnant low into south central Tennessee by 1 p.m. Friday. It should get deflected to the east. I don't think the upper flow is going to be backed enough to bring it up the coast. I just don't think that it will. But you never know. Like you said, sometimes you get little surprises. Excuse me. And by the way, I don't know why they did this. I guess it certainly looked a lot better last night. I'm failing to see where Paulette here is. It's east of it's south of the Azores and east of Portugal, but it really doesn't look like very much. So I don't know why they're still keeping it a tropical storm. But they know better than I do, so I'm not going to argue. By the way, if you look carefully, on the you can see where the bottom of Teddy is. If you look where Virginia is and you go to the east, you can see the bottom the on the enhanced loop, the bottom of the lower clouds that are down in the Atlantic there, east of North Carolina and Virginia. But what really stands out to me, Joe, is that there's this the frontal boundary that runs down south of Florida all the way across the north shore of Cuba into the Gulf of Mexico, and you've got a almost looks like well, it was earlier a fairly impressive flare up of thunderstorms, but it's also creating unfavorable conditions in much of the western Atlantic with regards to tropical cyclone development because you are getting all sorts of wind shear going on. There's an upper low that is moving northwestward. You can kind of see it. You can see it pretty well here, looping around right in there. Some of this down here, the remnants of Wilfred, and looks like Africa's kind of shut down a little bit here. There doesn't seem to be any waves coming off. So, as you said yesterday, and rightfully so, we probably are going to be in for a little bit of a break here. You can't be pumping out tropical storm after tropical storm at the rate that we have been without the atmosphere at some point taking a breather. It has to. It has to. And it has to reload. So we might go through a period of a week or so, or maybe even a little bit longer than that, where we don't have any tropical systems to worry about, unless something homegrown were to develop, say, inside that frontal boundary. But other than that, we are going to catch a break here for a little while.
Yes, indeed. Kind of like a baseball player who goes on a tear and hits like, 8 home runs over a 12 game period, and then all of a sudden he stops for a while. Well, a baseball player gets tired, and I'm sure that it's not so much that the Earth is getting tired. It's just that when you have so many tropical systems and hurricanes and tropical storms, that's nature's way. That's the Earth's way of letting off steam, so to speak, to get rid of all of that excessive or surplus heat. So once you've gotten rid of a goodly amount of that, I'm assuming that the Earth says, all right, enough for a little while. We don't have to keep keep this up, and that's probably what's going to happen over the next week or 10 days. A huge subtropical high pressure system is going to become quite prominent over the North Atlantic waters, and with something like that, it's a bit more difficult for a tropical system to get its act together or the tropical systems to develop as freely as they have been in recent days and weeks over the Atlantic waters.
Starting with tonight on the upper air, Teddy is south of Nova Scotia. You have a wrapped up cutoff low in the Gulf of Alaska and sort of a west to west northwest flow across the northern tier of states and into the northeast. And the upper air system, Joe, that represents beta, does kind of show up on. I moved it to Thursday. There is a little bit of a shortwave trough there from Kentucky down into Texas, and it stays kind of flat. It does pass out just to our south. So if there were a little bit more room, probably you could make a case for some of that northern fringe moisture maybe getting up here. Perhaps the clouds get up here, but the shortwave does get suppressed to the southeast. And then we just wait until early next week when a deep trough piles into the eastern part of the United States during the first half of next week, and then another short wave comes down later in the week and swings into the east, and yet a third short wave into the following weekend, the weekend of October 3rd and 4th. Moves through the northeast and it's after that that the flow kind of flattens out just a little bit. So it does suggest that we may finally get some rain. The question is, now, I thought, my view was that it's like we're getting two cold fronts next week, and the first one was Sunday night and Monday was the weaker of the bunch, but it was really the one coming later on Tuesday, and then I looked at today's, the new GFS, which all of a sudden has decided that with the first front that approaches Sunday night and Monday, yeah, there are showers in western New York and western Pennsylvania. They never get here. They absolutely never get here. There's a low that forms in the eastern lakes and takes all those showers up into Canada, and then we have to wait for another arm that the whole upper trough to come around, and it's later on Tuesday into Tuesday night with the second system that you wind up getting some showers and maybe even a thunderstorm in the mix. And then behind it is some very cool air, and depending on how the upper trough sets up in the east, there may or may not be some kind of wave that develops on that front that could bring some rain later next week. So there are a lot of question marks, at least that are popping up for the longer term. And the other thing I just want to point out is if you watch up at the Pacific Northwest, we do have the first wave of heavy rain coming in tomorrow, and then a second wave comes in on Friday, and then a third wave comes in on Saturday, and another one on Sunday. So, but you'll notice, folks, the rain really doesn't extend that far to the south. It's Washington and northern Oregon that get the most of it, and not much, and not much of anything at all south of there.
Doesn't look
So
like it's even going to. Yeah, I mean, the border of Oregon and California will get some possible significant rain, but doesn't really get too much further south than that. It looks like San Francisco may stay dry. So
yep.
there you go.
Now, I did, by the way, because we mentioned this last night, and for those of you who are interested, I'll put this link up on the chat board when I'm done, because I can't really do it right now for technical reasons. But as soon as I'm done, I'll put the link on this. This is from the New York website, the Upton, New York website, on the what's called the Great New England Hurricane of 1938, or the Long Island Express. And this page is loaded with stuff, and you can pull up all the maps that they have. It's really quite interesting to see. If well, I had the map, and here we go. So let me run it back up from the very beginning so we could take a look at what exactly was going on going into all of this. But just looking at the upper flow trough off the upper low in Nova Scotia with a trough to the east, an upper ridge sitting in Tennessee and Kentucky. I mean, this is sort of a typical uh, summary look to the upper air. And this is, by the way, about a week or two. This is back on the 9th of September, 1938. So this was a couple of weeks before. They just kind of want to show, give you an idea of how things changed as they rolled along. At least that's the date on here. Yeah, 9/10. So running through the upper air over time, eventually what happens is you get this deep trough, and you see it here. Strong ridge builds out in the Atlantic, way out in the Atlantic, deep trough. And I'm going to stop it here right at this point just for a second. This is on the 16th of September. Okay. So the 38 hurricane is actually located right down here. I don't know, that red doesn't really show up very well. So let's try yellow. And yeah, there you go. So there's your 38 hurricane. You got this deep north-south trough, Joe, that sets up right around 85 degrees west. And when we move this forward on the upper air, you're going to see that trough never really swings eastward. It actually, another shortwave swings in and dives an even deeper trough into the east. You have a cutoff low in Wisconsin, and now your 38 hurricane is north of Puerto Rico, passing east of the Bahamas. And you see how the upper flow, folks, on the East Coast is pretty much from south to north. You got a deep trough here, the upper flow running south to north up the East Coast. Let me get you. Let me draw
Almost
that.
like it was locked in a channel, if you will.
Yes, exactly. It had no place to go. It just shot up straight north. This was a this is the setup when I talk about the fact that you need a deep trough to set up in a certain way along the East Coast to create what Joe just described as the channel. And this was a perfect setup. The deep trough to our west and north picks up um, the hurricane and then shoots it right up into over Long Island and into New England. And if you look at the surface map, which we can take, this is actually another view here of the upper air. This is a tighter view, so you can see it when I move it along, what happens. Wrapped up upper low in southern Lake Michigan, the the hurricane represented down there on the lower right starts to move north northwest into that trough, which just literally picks it up. Upper low dives down into West Ohio and West Virginia and takes the whole thing and shoots it on up very, very rapidly. By the way, this thing was flying like a rocket ship when it was moving up the East Coast. And here's a look at the surface on that particular day. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so you can, we'll get the whole map in here. All right, that might work a bit better.
That's kind of like the track that a hurricane that you and I remember, I think, quite well, in 1976, Hurricane Bell. Bell took a very similar track to the 38 hurricane, not as potent as the 38 storm, but still the track was very similar right across
Right.
Long Island.
Bell and Gloria probably in terms of the upper air setup was similar. What was different was probably the depth of those troughs that brought those systems up the coast. If the troughs had been as deep and as intense as this one was, you would have shot those storms up like a rocket ship, which they didn't really do. This one was moving at 50 to 60 miles an hour or more, so it really didn't even have time to weaken when it moved over the colder waters. It went in terms of timing. It was off the at 11 o'clock in the morning. It was east of Wallops Island, Virginia. Okay, so it's roughly about 200 miles south of Long Island, and it gets to Long Island by at 2:30.
Yes.
So I mean that it was flying. It was just absolutely flying, and it took 3.5 hours. So it only spent 3.5 hours over that colder water. So the cold water didn't even have time to have impact here, and that's what made this the powerhouse that it was. And when you look at the wind field that was associated with it, east of the center, you had sustained winds in the brown. Wait, I'm trying to read this scale. Uh, Okay, I'm sorry. So in the darker reds and browns, you're talking 90, 100, and 110 knot winds over eastern Long Island, southeast Connecticut, and into Rhode Island. When you go on the west side, the winds were much less, but there were some sustained winds of 60 to 70 over Long Island, western Connecticut, and the Hudson Valley, and along coastal New Jersey. And you can see some of the other track maps here. It's a very interesting site here that they put together. And as far as the rainfall was concerned, the rainfall on the west side was fairly heavy. The rainfall on the east side, not so much, which is, again, typical of what happens when these things become extratropical. The rain gets heavy on the west side, and the wind goes crazy on the east side. So I'm going to put this on the chat board right now for those of you who are interested. Give it a look and have some meteorological fun with it. A lot of information there. And if you look around at you have to tell you, Joe, um, the Upton website of the Weather Service, they have a lot of interesting New York facts there that are really worth taking a look at. Most of the Weather Service websites do have a lot of information on them. If you just sort of dig around in there, you can find a lot of this stuff. But the link is up there now on the chat board, and we're up here um, full screen.
That storm devastated Providence, Rhode Island. To this day, whenever you mention a major storm in Providence, everybody will always reference the great hurricane of 1938 as one of the storms that really did a number on that city. And for New York City, if you're wondering, I did do a little research. It was nothing more really than a very squally, heavy, rainy day. Uh, I don't know if it did any damage. It certainly got a lot of people's attention the way the rain just came in so quickly, enveloped the New York metropolitan area, and just as quick moved on out. But for places that were further east, to the east of the storm track, that's where the real. And I also remember reading stuff about this storm all the way up into Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
Knocking down trees that had been standing for like 100 years or whatever, every which way. It was a devastating storm. And I think, again, Joe, what you mentioned about the forward speed, 40, 50 miles an hour, added on to already a very robust circulation, probably made the storm more devastating or more damaging than it could have been.
Rhode Island got hit very hard with that. You ever see the pictures from Rhode Island?
Yes.
I mean, it really just got totally devastated from it. So Daniel Fitzsimmons was just asking me about some of the older maps. If you go to WPC.gov, I just put the link up for that. The surface map that I use from time to time. You can go back pretty far back on that site and pull up the actual surface maps. If you know the dates of the storms you want to look at, you can pull up the maps pretty much with ease. So again, I'll put the link up for you on the chat board, so you can take a look at that.
Is that the one that references the NOAA library with the maps, the weekly weather maps?
No, well, these were the actual maps that we used to get. Remember the maps we used to get on the DIFAX, the surface map. When I pull up when I pull up the surface chart, this chart here. Hang on one second. Yeah, this one here. So you'll see it on the screen in a minute, but it's this one. So this is tonight's surface analysis, but on the upper right, there's a calendar there, and you can go. We've done this before on the show. You can go back all the way to, Jesus, you go back to 1985 and pull up the surface map if you want. The calendar is there on the upper left of the page.
Wow.
So again, the link is on the chat board, and if you dig around, it's amazing, really. All the Weather Service sites is just so much stuff, and I always hear people that are in from the European countries that their weather services uh, really don't provide very much for the weather for the weather geeks to to look at. But our weather service goes hog wild with the stuff, so we should
What
be,
I used to do
and it's all free too.
yeah, what I used to do as a youngster was I go down to 40th Street and Fifth Avenue, the Mid Manhattan Library, and I used to go to that library to get microfilm, look at the microfilm of the New York Times, which back in the day, when you went to the weather page, they actually printed the national or then the United States Weather Bureau map, complete with isobars and wind barbs and weather symbols and everything else, except if you wanted to find out what happened, let's say between like 1942 and 1945, they just had the weather forecast. They had no maps. And the reason is that the United States government precluded them from printing maps because they were afraid they would fall into enemy hands. They felt that by doing by showing the weather maps that the Germans or the Italians or whoever it was that we were at war with at the time would try to use those in some way
Oh yeah,
to help them out. And I told this story once before where the late Henry Morgan, he not Harry Morgan from MASH, there was a guy who used to be on
Henry
television,
Morgan, yeah.
shows, radio, Henry Morgan. He was a humorist and he was on radio back in the 40s. And one time he was doing a faux weather forecast, one that didn't make any sense whatsoever. And he was reading the forecast, said, and the barometer is falling. And all of a sudden you heard a crash. And he said, and there it was right there. You heard the barometer fall. The next day, the government, somebody from the government called the station, it was WOR, and got online with Henry Morgan and complained about his weather forecast. He said, you can't do that. That's against the rules. You can't do something like, give that kind of information out. And Henry Morgan said, it's all made up. It was for comic.
I know.
It was nothing. And the guy comes back and said, yes, but what happens if it were right?
Well, the Great Atlantic Hurricane came up the East Coast during a
1944. Yeah,
during a weather blackout,
right.
a weather information blackout.
But you
So
can get all that information now on the internet from a variety of different sites. Um, from at daily weather maps, you'll see the NOAA library, and you can get to see these maps. You could either get it through something called Deja Vu, which I would strongly urge you not to get because
right.
it's a very arcane type of thing that you have to download onto your computer, or you can get it as a PDF. It'll take longer, but everybody can look at a PDF if you have Adobe. Um, and what's amazing to me, Joe, is that these maps apparently belonged to somebody at one time, maybe an assiduous weather observer or whatever. We're talking about the weekly and daily weather maps that used to come in the mail. We
Yes.
subscribed them in the 70s and 60s and 50s. And again, they must have belonged to somebody because sometimes during a major storm, you see handwritten on the top, like beginning of great hurricane of
Hmm.
19 whatever, or first day of blizzard of or whatnot. So, and it's amazing to me. And whoever did this, they photographed, they made digital images of every single map going all the way back to 1871.
Isn't that
Amazing.
something?
And now you can get it just like
Just
that. You
like
don't have
that.
to pay for it or anything. It's there for all of you to enjoy and to look at if you're into weather navens.
Just want to mention tonight the chairman has had a bit of a setback. He has a fever again today, and nausea is back. The cough is not back. And now his mom, because the chairman does take care of his mom, she's getting symptoms. So he's supposed to find out tomorrow about his COVID test. So let's hope that it's not COVID, and that it is just a general bug that's running around. Because
And compounding everything that he's going through, he also mentions, Joe, that on top of everything else, his upper bridge fell out while biting into a piece of bread.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I did mention that to me yesterday. I didn't know whether he wanted everybody to know that, so I just kind of kept it quiet.
Well, he
The bridge
posted
part.
that report, so I guess it's for all to see there.
Well, look, fingers crossed, and focus prayers that that everything's okay and that the COVID test comes back negative, and that you just got some bad bug that was running around, and you'll find out tomorrow. Hopefully, they'll get those results to you. It's ridiculous that he's had to wait 6 days to find out the results of this test. I mean,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
one of the things that's one of the drawbacks that has been mentioned in recent days and weeks is the length of time that it takes to get it after you take a test to get the results. Um, but that's the way the world is today.
want to also acknowledge Tori 7038. Uh, I think you're new to the board and from southeastern Massachusetts. Thank you for being here. Thank you for hitting super chat tonight. Joe and I very much appreciate it. Welcome. And tell all your weather friends to come on, because Joe and I are on here just about every night and on Sundays at 11 o'clock. By the way, should also mention that this show, the Joe and Joe Weather Show, as well as my morning video, Weather in 5, are available as podcasts. So if you can't watch the video, you can just plug in your earbuds and listen, and you can find that all on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and a whole host of other places where podcasts call their home. So take advantage of that. If you can't listen to the video, I usually put the podcast on is up about an hour after the video is over, and you and I are going to take off tomorrow, okay? Because
I was going to say, well, we're going to take off, on Friday, but
no,
yeah.
we're going to take off on Friday too.
Oh, okay. Oh my
Okay.
goodness.
Um, so yeah, no, we're going to take off tomorrow. This is 11 days in a row, and I'm when I get to this point, uh, 10, 11, 12 days in a row, I start to get, you get a little mentally fried. It's hard to do it. We're ad-libbing for an hour. If anybody thinks we script all this is
Oh,
all on
oh,
the fly, you know. And sometimes weird stuff happens that works, and sometimes it falls flat. But that's the nature of what we do. So yeah, we're going to take a day off tomorrow. So Thursday we will be back on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, and maybe if stuff is going on, we could do Friday and take off Saturday. We're taking off Saturday regardless, so it's a much question of whether we take Friday and Saturday or just Saturday.
I mentioned this on my farewell when I left News 12 in December of 2016, and they allowed me to say a few words, a few parting goodbyes or whatever. One of the things I mentioned in that parting goodbye is, and a lot of people don't realize this, is that the weathercaster, the meteorologist, the on-camera weather person, is the only one out of the group that you see behind the anchor desk that doesn't use the teleprompter. The two news people, the sports guy, they use a teleprompter. We never use a teleprompter. We just get up, walk up. We also the only ones who get up from behind the desk and actually have to walk over to do our presentation. I remember once somebody was giving a tour, and they passed by my office, the weather office at News 12, and a woman stuck her head in the door and said, "Oh, and what do you do?" And I said, "Who, me? I run the PowerPoint."
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
basically what we do, right? Every night
Yeah,
we run
pretty
the PowerPoint.
much.
And
Uh,
and the other thing is, we are the only ones, the weathercasters. This gives you a full appreciation now when you watch the television news. The weathercaster is the only one sitting behind that desk who actually predicts the future. We tell you what's
which
going
is
to
why
happen.
we should be paid the most money.
Right. That's it. I mean, like when you see the news anchors, whoever
I
they
mean,
are.
the news department screws up the present and the past,
Right.
but it takes real talent to screw up the future.
Exactly.
So we should have been paid more.
And the
Um,
only and the sports guy, the only time the sports guy is asked to make a prediction is if, let's say, the Kentucky Derby is coming
and
up,
he's always wrong.
or
So
the World Series or the Super Bowl. But more often than not, the sports guy is just sitting there and he's telling you the scores of a game that may have happened yesterday or last night.
right.
We, on the other hand, we have to tell you what's going to happen tonight, tomorrow, and sometimes, if there's a holiday coming up. An example here, Yom Kippur. That's going to be a big celebration, or not celebration, but an observance
Observance.
for those of us
Right. The
who are
holiest day.
and they need to know maybe they're going to be out of doors
Hmm.
during that time. Got to know what the weather's going to be. Is it going to rain? Is it what's going to happen during that time frame? So there are various times during the year, Christmas, New Year's, whatever. The pressure's on us, Joe. Well, I don't have to tell you that.
Yeah. Well, nobody ever listens to what we say anyway.
That's right.
Benji Frenzy, who is was I mentioned earlier from Cape Breton in Nova Scotia, said for anyone curious, the Environment Canada website has a warning. I assume a tropical storm warning up for Teddy. Daniel Fitzsimmons asks, "Do you ever use Weather Underground because it's so inaccurate?" And the answer is one word: rarely. Uh,
Yes.
or I'll add two more words: if ever. Um, let's see. There was another comment here I wanted to address. Where'd it go? Uh, oh boy.
Oh,
Oh,
before you get to
Gordon
that,
Gordon Purcell watching from Grenada, the island of Grenada.
oh my goodness.
Which wonderful. We welcome you. We whenever back during Irma and Maria, had so many people that were watching from the islands, and as one person told me that we were basically the only thing they could get once Irma went by. There was one person had messaged me and saying, and it really kind of struck me that. They would they could get very little in terms of what was going on in the internet, and they just luckily they were able to get my show at the time, and I don't know, just kind of I never realized you don't realize how much impact you can have in terms of somebody's life, especially at that time, because as you recall, Joe, Irma went by at a Category 5, and right behind it was Jose, which became a Category 5. It wound up going east of the Leeward Islands, but it was only about 2 or 3 days behind, and it got perilously close. And these people had no idea it was coming. And they had no clue that there was another hurricane that was right behind it. Thankfully, it made the turn. Uh, but yeah, we always love it when we see folks from places outside the United States. No limits. Um, no limits is watching from Halifax here. Joined for Teddy. News stayed meteorologist expletive talk. Keep up the good work, fellas. Thank you very much. And of
Thank
course,
you.
if you are watching from there, I mean, we kind of give you a cursory view of what's going on, and it's obviously dated. It was 8 o'clock Eastern time, so if you're watching this at 2 o'clock in the morning, the stuff is 6 hours old. Please go to Environment Canada's website or your local weather officials and get the information, the current information, so you can stay up to date on what's going on with Teddy as it moves northward. So we're hitting 8 o'clock. Any parting
I
thoughts before we say goodbye?
I need to mention just one more thing, and this is my wife was the one who dug this up. In fact, you remember right after we went off the air last night,
Mm-hmm.
she came downstairs. A lot of you, I said that when we went to Nova Scotia the first time around in 1989 BC, before children, we went to a place in Nova Scotia called Magnetic Hill. And many of you came back and said, no, no, you're mistaken. Magnetic Hill is in New Brunswick, most notably Moncton, New Brunswick, and that is absolutely true. But somehow she managed to dredge up out there in cyberspace, um, formerly known as the Givon Road, the route from Berwick. And Berwick immediately, I remember in 1989 when we went to Nova Scotia, we visited a place on Nova Scotia called Berwick. The route from Berwick to Harborville, the road that is inclined over the North Mountain in Nova Scotia, was at one time known as the Magnetic Hill. It's an interesting phenomenon, supposedly by stopping your vehicle. I don't have to say supposedly. We just had a brand new Mazda, and we were breaking it in by driving it up through Maine, and we took the ferry to Nova Scotia. Stop your vehicle at what appears to be the bottom of the hill, shut off your motor, the gear shift in neutral, and the vehicle would begin to move backwards and go up the hill. And there had been mention of this magnetic hill in the Register. I presume the Register is a newspaper in Nova Scotia. And among the readership, one fellow in the United States wrote to suggest that the editor should get off the bottle and sober up. But it did exist back then. I don't know if it still exists now. But my wife also pointed out yet another website She came up with not just one magnetic hill, but about a dozen. In fact, 15 magnetic hills in Canada. It's amazing, and at least one of those is in Nova Scotia. So there you go,
All
Joe.
right. Okie dokie. So we'll see you tomorrow. No, we won't. We're going to take off tomorrow. We'll see you on Thursday on the Joe and Joe Weather Show at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Stay safe up in Nova Scotia, and hopefully we get this break in the tropics. It's got to slow down for a while, and hopefully we're going into a quiet period for give us at least a week to kind of recharge. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Good night.